All right, we're back in live in the studio, and I'm really pleased to see Mercedes Macías is here. She's running for Chico City Council. So welcome to the KZFR Peace and Social Justice Show, Mercedes.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Bill.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've known Mercedes, and I can say that Mercedes does not have a radio smile. She's got a TV smile. She lights up a room. She's someone that really gets involved in the community and knows the issue. So I was really pleased to see you were running. I'm really happy to see that. So for the listeners, actually, we're going to have Mercedes and Giovanni's going to be on right after this. But I did send out an outline. I had like 7 different things, and I gave the candidates a chance to know what they were going to be asked. And then if we have a little bit of extra time, I might talk about some of the different issues in town, like move the junkyard and the Esplanade. But the first question on my list, Mercedes, is just simply tell our listeners a bit about yourself.
Sure. Excellent. Thanks very much. So my name is Mercedes Macías. I am 26 years old, and I am a native Mexican American. I'm running for Chico City Council here as an extremely progressive candidate, and I've lived in the area since I was 3 years old.
Extremely progressive candidate.
Yes.
What would that mean?
I can tell you a little bit more about that by answering the rest of the questions.
Okay, awesome.
If it's not answered at the end, I'd be happy to expand on it.
Perfect. So what are the things you love most about Chico?
What I love most about Chico is being able to recognize people. Living in a smaller area, you're able to go from place to place, such as your morning coffee shops, your pharmacy, your grocery stores, the farmer's market, your clothing store, Tri-Counties Bank, or whatever cultural hangouts, and you recognize the people. You can develop a friendly relationship with the folks who work there, and you recognize the people who shop there. And there's a sense of connection here. There's a sense of connection, community, and family that I feel Chico is all about. There's a confluence of different ideas here, different beliefs and mindsets. And so this is a hot spot for community revolutions to happen, and that is what I love most about Chico. And aside from all the beauty of the trees here and our beautiful waterways and parks.
So what characteristics Macías?
Macías.
Keep on to
Yes.
say it so I can get it right. Mercedes Macías. So what characteristics and skills qualify you to run for city council here on the 2016 November election?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I have lived here since I was 3, and for over 10 years, I've been an advocate for community development and civic engagement. Moving here, I've considered Chico my home, and I promote environmental stewardship as volunteering with a team leader through the Stream Team, which does citizen water monitoring, and with the City of Chico's Bidwell Park Watch. I have also had the honor of serving as a third-year administrator on the board of directors for the Theater on the Ridge in Paradise, which has been thriving as a 501c3 nonprofit for over 40 years. So I do have that experience as a group decision maker, and I'm familiar with the Brown Act. I know how to conduct myself properly in meetings. So I've represented a multitude of diverse voices through volunteer work. I've worked with the International Institute for Sexual and Gender Diversity, Food Not Bombs, and the Gateway Science Museum, and I was a lead docent at the Chico Creek Nature Center, just to name a few. Volunteer work is my vocation. It's my calling. So I've been around as a community volunteer for several years, and I'm able to bring that experience working with so many different people to the forefront to benefit our city as a member of City Council. I've been someone who serves without demanding financial gain, and that has allowed me to become a dignified individual that I feel is a true representative of our working people here in the community.
So thank you for explaining your skills and your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
What are some of Chico's strengths that you will be looking to focus on as a city councilor? What are some things you really like? We talked about what you love about Chico. What are some of the strengths that you would like to build upon?
Well, our Chico community is really strong in a lot of areas. And one of the things that I will want to focus on as a council member is preserving our parks and preserving our waterways and our greenways here for use by both our current and our future generations. That's something that's going to include continued discussions for proper disposal of local garbage and installment of a more efficient recycling system here, as well as ensuring that the businesses which operate in our area are aware of the impact that their products and the packaging for those products is having on our local and our global environment. So that's something that I'm really going to be focusing on, preserving the quality of life here in Chico.
So the sustainability aspect?
Yes, the sustainability aspect and the responsible business aspect that really needs to be more focused on here in our community, I believe, because we have so many small businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking.
So what community challenges would you like to make an impact on as a city councilor?
We have made a lot of progress as a community here toward addressing the issues of homelessness, substance abuse, and poverty, which are all really multifaceted issues and require a lot of attention. So we certainly have a lot farther to go on those issues and other issues, but that is something that I'll continue forward on as a member of Chico City Council if elected. I really need to focus on fiscally sound decisions for the city. And that means looking long-term at what Chico needs, what's going to benefit our community for the long term. So these short-sighted and emotion-driven decision-making that I've seen a lot of times in past years is what hurts our society the most when it comes to government action. So as a human society, if we could look at our own timelines and see, from point A to point F, all these little decisions that we made along the way that got us here, if we could have looked forward just far enough to predict those things, we could have had an impact on what we chose down the road, perhaps between point A and point B. So my goal is to implement long-term decision-making and thinking processes to the forefront of the City Council.
And so one of the other questions I have was something that's near and dear to my heart is inclusiveness, this feeling that, everyone's welcome. So when you hear the term community is everyone, what does that mean to you?
Community is everyone. So this is something that goes to the very root of the word community. It's co, meaning together, and commune, which means coming together, and unity. So community is a grouping together of those who share something in common. In this context, we're talking about where we live here. And where we live does not mean where you own property. It's where you rent or where you sleep or where you do business or where you share stories and build relationships. So that is community. And before we move on from that, I want to share something that I encountered just a couple of days ago. I was in a community gathering discussion centering around the issue of boundaries, personal boundaries, emotional boundaries, professional, sexual, all kinds of things related to the topic boundaries. At one point in the group, a young man shared the recent experience of one of his best friends, where this human male had practiced an act of violence on a female in an intimate partner relationship setting. Now, the act of violence was not directed toward the young man who was sharing the story, but we could all see in the group, there were about 30 of us, that the experience had affected him deeply. Even as a third party, he was affected by the violence that was carried out by a member of his community. And as a group, we all felt pained with him. So community as everyone really shows us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1963 from his Birmingham jail cell. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly, and I believe that this has never been more true than it is today, especially with the connection of social technology and social media.
To me, when I put this up, this is the funnest one I had was you have 60 seconds to capture our listeners' votes.
Yes.
Go.
All right. I want to remind us about the relationship between the terms leader and follower. There is an implied partnership here, for there cannot be one without the other. So the definition of a leader speaks of someone who is willing to explore an area just before others will arrive there, in order to show that the way is safe and clear. So a leader must take risks that others must not, in order to allow others who come after them safe passage across what could potentially be an otherwise hazardous situation. So in that way, a leader cannot lead anyone who does not agree to go in the declared direction. When someone takes an authoritarian role over others without obtaining informed consent from those people, no true partnership can take place. There is only thoughtless domination and coercion of power and control. So these things are not sustainable for any long-term society. If any culture is going to thrive and succeed, there has to be a highly functioning partnership between the followers and the leaders, and that relationship has to be justly achieved through direct democracy. Those who serve our community need to operate transparently and be held accountable for all their actions, and if they do not, they will not be respected by the public, and if they're not respected by the public, then unrest will grow on both sides until a very unhealthy community climate is undeniable.
So it's kind of cool. We got kind of through this boilerplate or this outline that I'd given you, Mercedes, and I appreciate your responses to that. But I'm going to kind of come back and talk about a few things that I took some notes on. But to me, I was really interested in the whole sustainability, the whole green movement, for lack of a better term. I mean, maybe you could give our listeners a little bit more understanding of how important the environment and a green environment is to you.
Absolutely. A green environment, and the word sustainable doesn't just apply to green and our environment. So I want to first start with that. But we live on one planet. We have one atmosphere. We have one air to share and breathe and one water to drink. There is a finite amount of these resources because of the continued pollution of our airways and waterways and soils, and therefore our food. All of those things go into our body as organic entities. It becomes the cells of our body. It is us. So when you start talking about the environment, I think people really need to be more long-term oriented toward these kinds of things, because these are the things that lead to illness and unrest in the body, and then illness and unrest in our society. It ripples out from there. And what we eat, what we consume, whether it's food, whether it's unsustainable business, everything that we consume becomes the outcome of our society.
No, I know. I'm remembering a really cool article a couple of years ago, and it had a picture. I'm pretty sure it was you. I could be wrong. I'm going to be wrong on air. But you were testing water.
Yes.
Right. So
why don't you?
Me. Yeah, that was you. That's one of the many things you've kind of volunteered to do. So maybe tell us a little bit about that project and
Sure.
The clean waterways and how important that is to you in Chico.
So that photo was taken by Timmery Hamill. She is a marine biologist, a riparian biologist, and she works with the Stream Team, which is a citizen water monitoring project. So it's all volunteer run, but she has a degree, I believe even a master's degree, and it has the certifications to run this program, wherein we go at 10 different spots along the Big Chico Creek, from the mouth all the way up to Browns Hole, actually even farther, I believe 30, where the, what's that called? 10 Mile House Road, up in that direction near the reserve. We go all the way and we test these different points on the same day at the same time, once a month. And we test for the pH, we test for total dissolved solids, we test for the fecal matter, all of these things that affect the quality of our ecosystems along the waterway and can potentially leak into city water. So we test these things, and she reports to the State Water Board, and I volunteered with that for several years.
Neat. That sounds like a neat project. So over those several years, you were able to test water in all the different locations. You kind of got like a guided tour, so to speak, of some of the waterways in Chico.
Yes.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Except when it's cold. But except when it's cold. But we get out there and do it, and it's all volunteer run, and it's really fun.
Someone that grew up in New Hampshire, it never gets cold here. It gets cool, but not really cold. But I understand what you're saying. So actually, I think this is actually a really good one for the topic. But there's some local issues that have been kind of burning in the front press, the front burner, so to speak. But what do you think of when you hear "move the junkyard"? What's your stance on all that?
You're
craziness?
Speaking about Chico Scrap Metal?
I am Chico Scrap. I say move the junkyard because that's I believe it's actually a nonprofit, or at least a Facebook group. That's what they call themselves. Move the junkyard. So yeah, it's all about Chico Scrap Metal and that long, outstanding, decade-long feud of they shouldn't be there where they're at. What do you think about that?
I have several thoughts about that. And first and foremost is when I started to get involved in local politics in 2011, I started attending council meetings and hearing about this issue for the first time in my life. I was 21. I'm 26 now. And to know that this is still something that the city is having to argue about and have discussions about, to me, is outrageous. As a governing body, if you cannot earn respect from the entities within the community which you serve, it's not going to work. And Chico Scrap Metal has, regardless of the situation, continued to disrespect city ordinance and continue to disrespect community. I'm not okay with that. I believe there's a lot of people involved, and I want to have compassion for that. But I think that it's too long to talk about this issue when it is polluting our environment right now. It's been talked about for too long, and something needs to be done.
Yeah, it's proverbial kick the can. But, I think voters are kind of a little bit frustrated with, if they elect city, it's kind of like you're saying, you're elected to city council, you're elected to make decisions and not just, be the punter on the football team.
There's a lot of room for, armchair philosophizing, but not when you're making policy. Mm-hmm. We need groups and other advocates to help shape these discussions so that when they come before the council's able to make a decision. Because otherwise, it's just a lot of valuable time and resources and time wasted on these issues.
Another thing, I guess I can say it's near and dear to my heart because I walk down this street nearly every single day. If I leave my house, I walk down this street, Esplanade.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of discussion about the need for change related to public safety, and that is a clear need. I mean, I see kids dodging traffic. I dodge traffic, bicycles, screeching tires. It is clearly a public safety hazard. And again, it's one of the most beautiful streets in America. What's your take on that whole thing? And that actually has been punted till after the election, in all practice, and there's no decisions been made. So, what's your thoughts on the Esplanade and how to redo it so it can be a safer, more passable?
It's also a very delicate topic because it's nostalgic for me growing up here. It's also nostalgic for most of the residents who have been used to the way that it is and used to the beauty of the trees and that whole aspect of it. But I too dodge traffic when I go down Esplanade. I ride a bike principally. I also drive. Either way, it's a rough commute down the Esplanade, and there needs to be bike lanes. There needs to be a focus on community. There needs to be a bike lane like they have in San Francisco and a bus lane like they have in San Francisco. I see no reason why our city shouldn't start planning right now for 10, 15 years in the future, however long it's going to take. But we need to start making policy right now that's going to ensure the sustainable travel along that route. Because, as you're saying, pedestrians, cyclists, bus riders, they're having a very hard time on the Esplanade. And there's a lot of drag racing that goes on the Esplanade, too. I think a lot of things need to change. A lot of stop signs need to be put in. And I think that in the long term, those things are going to save the city money when it comes to hospital bills and public safety calls. That's how I feel about that topic. I do believe that there needs to be green along the Esplanade. Otherwise, it's not the Esplanade. There needs to be trees. And I hope that we can preserve as many as possible in their state right now. But change always has some casualties. And in that sense, I believe in doing whatever it takes to ensure that that's going to be a safe thoroughfare for travelers.
Maybe on the same topic, but a different, solution to it. Because I remember when I moved here in 1990 at the age of 30, I'd lived most of my adult life, other than being in the Navy, in New England, land of traffic circles. And I can remember when I first was in California for like maybe a year or something going, oh my God, what is wrong with the engineers here? Why don't we have more traffic circles? But there's been just an awful lot of vehemency around the fact that we may or may not, want to put in a traffic circle. I mean, do you have any thoughts on, traffic circles? I mean, they were looking at putting one at the end of my street, at the, I shouldn't say at the end, where it meets Esplanade on First Ave.
I have found traffic circles to be safer and more effective than four-way stops. And when people say, I cannot adapt to traffic circles, it just reminds me how closed-minded this country is. We're not even on the metric system yet. And I want you to think about that. If this country can't strive to make some adjustments for the greater good, then we're not going to get anywhere. And I think that a traffic circle, it's going to improve everybody's stress level. There's going to be a lot less collisions. People are going to get used to it when you implement more of them. I understand that we haven't grown up with it in this area, but the traffic circles that I have encountered here in Chico that have been put in, especially near Upper Park, those are effective. The ones along 8th Avenue, those are effective. Even when people come speeding into it, they have no choice but to slow down to get around that turn. Otherwise, they're going to damage the alignment of their car. So these things are useful. And in that, since you're asking me about traffic circles, I think a traffic circle would potentially be a very great idea for First and Esplanade.
Another thing is a 56-year-old, and I've grown up for many decades, and I've been kind of active. I've read reading the Boston Globe when I was in third grade. So the term public health and safety, it's always been tied together. Mm-hmm. Public health and safety. It just makes sense.
Yes.
Public safety, public health. Public safety, public health.
Yes.
There's been a movement, at least for the last, I believe it's been at least 3 years, where the number one priority in Chico is safety. Mm-hmm. And there's absolutely no priority anywhere on any of their list. They got 4 or 5 more, economic stuff and everything else. There's no priority for health. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
I believe that topic, people believe it's the individual's responsibility to care for their own health, so it shouldn't be the responsibility of the government. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't have healthy citizens, we're not going to have healthy anything else. It all starts from the inside and goes out. And people who have studied anthropology, people who have studied human society and history know this. So to ignore health and to ignore the health concerns and the issues that we have in our community, such as houselessness and drug use and the new Jim Crow, those things are not not prudent. I think that health is a very key aspect of it because safety is prevention, right? But health is the ongoing maintenance of these systems. So I believe that health is an issue that needs to be brought up because not everybody is able to care for just themselves.
Yeah, I'd really like to see that more in the dialogue at the council meetings. I do remember I used to go a lot. I haven't been to city council meetings. I made a conscious decision that it wasn't worth my energy to go. But the last thing I'll say on that topic is Constantine, I'm sorry I forget his first name, but
Chris,
thank you, the finance guy. He literally was at the point trying to help the conversation along about the library. Mm-hmm. And instead of putting it in the box he wanted to put it in, I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth, but he said it was a safety issue because obviously the homeless folks are able to go there and get services, and that's safety. They feel safer and stuff in there. But immediately my head going, no, that's a public health issue. That's a health issue in that people need a place to be. They can get out of the cold and literally connect with services. So I think the fact that the city has made a conscious decision not to have health as a priority has just caused the conversations to get kind of polluted. And diluted when we should just really be upfront going, this is a health issue. This is a health issue in our community.
Those are very hard emotional topics. They're very complex issues. And so I can see why city officials might be more hesitant to discuss them because nobody wants to say, oh, well, I think somebody should be homeless or I think somebody should be hungry or starve, whatever it is, or sick. Nobody wants to ever say those things because they don't believe those things. So instead of saying, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck, I'm frustrated, there's a complete neglect of the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's not one of the...
It's uncomfortable, for sure.
Yeah. So we're just about at the transition point here. Giovanni Terceri is in the green room. It's not much of a green room. I don't even think it's actually green. But we've covered a fair amount of breadth here in the past 25 minutes. So maybe there was a topic or something you'd like to end on that we've discussed.
There is something that I'd like to add, actually. So I'm really glad that we were able to get through the material and answer a couple questions on the spot there. It was great. So last thing I want to conclude with talking more about the city responsibility. So a community responsibility. So in addition to ensuring checks and balances between city agencies and the public officials need to be reminded of what they're expected to be, which is public servants. We can't get greedy and become obsessed with our own self-interest as individuals. It's time for more individuals to start thinking in terms of community and not just self-serving motifs, which are short-sighted, and they always lead to dissatisfaction for the individual, dissatisfaction for their groups and their community. So the mindset within our local government needs to reflect the minds of the people that it has sworn to represent through civil service. This means more residents choosing to stand up and take an active role in the development of our hometown through volunteer work and grassroots organizing, neighborhood organizing. So the city officials and staff, they need to do their part to foster responsible and intentional growth in our community. But they can't do it alone. We all have to take our part. So now more than ever, it is time for citizens in government to return to their original relationships, to dedicate their lives to the health of our families, schools, neighborhoods, clubs, groups, and so on, all community bodies, so that together we will work cooperatively to implement long-term solutions to social issues, treating them all with the human compassion and dignity that these complex issues deserve. So I hope that you will cast a vote for me to serve you on Chico City Council, and I'm Mercedes Macías.
Mercedes Macías, that was excellent. I can't think of a better segment that I've done that accents people-powered radio.
Yeah.